Saturday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Saturday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Saturday. Saturday, bring it on.
This is Julie Rogers Pomillia, granddaughter of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, and you're listening to the Dr. Sky Experience on Talk Radio 77 WABC.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the radio program that you tell us you like so much, the Dr. Sky Experience, in the form of a radio show and a podcast, exclusively here at Talk Radio 77 WABC, with our unique Dr. Sky Experience. We call WABC the crown jewel of radio, the iconic Talk Radio 77, out of New York City, the nation, the world, and I'm sure, well out into the cosmos. As many of you know by now, with the Dr. Sky Experience, we primarily talk about science, astronomy, space, aviation, weather, but we have a plethora of interviews here, which we're so proud to introduce all the time from the world of celebrity guests. And today, ladies and gentlemen, is no exception. We have a very famous story to tell you about an iconic duo in the Western music world, Roy Rogers and, obviously, Dale Evans. But who better to talk about it is a loving granddaughter entitled, that book is entitled Your Heroes, My Grandparents, A Granddaughter's Love, Julie Rogers Pomillia. Julie, it's such an honor to have you here on the Dr. Sky Experience. I love, as you do, and so many people, both your grandparents and their legacy. So welcome to the Dr. Sky Experience. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be on here talking with you today, too.
Well, we also love Harlan, who helped set this up, and over the course of about the last 15 years, we're so honored to have Harlan as a publicist, as you know so well, to talk about the stories that we're about to talk about today. But
yes,
it's so amazing, to have you here today to talk about this. And, I always read the books from cover to cover, and that's one of the things I'm proud of, because with the great stories that you're going to be able to tell us, Julie, this is so amazing. So in more than the time we have today, there's 33 chapters in this book. Tell us from the heart. Obviously, I can imagine what you're going to say, but tell us that, the passion behind this book. It's an amazing story. So please, let's begin there.
Well, I started writing this actually for my own sons, because I got to that age where you start to look back on your life and you think, my kids don't know a lot of how I grew up. So I thought I'd make a mom book and give it to them for Christmas. Just something just very unofficial. And then along the way, when I go to these Western festivals, people would say, oh, you have so many great stories about your grandparents. You need to write a book. And I would say, well, I kind of am. I'm writing it for my sons. And they would always encourage me, they meaning people I would run into or the event coordinators, they'd say, you need to publish it to a wider audience because other people would like to hear these stories too. So that's sort of how it came about. And they are stories from my heart, just single little, experiences or conversations we had.
Well, Julie, it's an honor. And throughout the next number of minutes that we have with you, we're going to try to go into this as deeply as possible. But I just want people to understand, just in case the generation today listening to this, and many of the people who do know your grandparents, and obviously Roy Rogers, the king of the Cowboys, Dale Evans, Queen of the West. What an amazing storybook you have here. I mean, that's not just written word. It's the pictures that are so amazing here. I mean, I just happen to love some of these pictures, seeing them in their prime together, in their illustrious outfits that they have on, in sharing with the world, their story. And let's start from the beginning. I mean, your dad, of course, let's describe the whole genealogy here. Your dad, of course, as we talk about, Tom Fox, that is what? Is that the only biological child that Dale had, Dale Evans?
Yes.
Can you describe
the lineage
of your father? They
had one between the two of them, which was Robin, but He was born with severe heart defects and Down syndrome, and back then they didn't have all of the tools and the medical advances to prolong their lives and really, help. So she passed away 2 days before her second birthday. They had to bury her on her second birthday.
I'm so sorry.
And
God bless.
That was heartbreaking. It was the only child they had together. Grandpa had 2 that were biological from his second marriage, and Grandma had the one, my dad. And so after they had that heartbreak with Robin, they decided to start adopting kids that were maybe otherwise unadoptable. So they adopted one of my uncles had some mild brain damage and was slow on the uptake because his parents had beaten him badly and left him, just deserted him. And they thought, what's going to happen to a little guy like this? So they took him home and they raised him. I had another aunt that was from Scotland. I had one from Korea. I still have one that is Native American. And so they started adopting all these kids.
Wow, what a story. Folks, you're listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. Once again, thanking you for your time here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. The crown jewel of radio, as we like to call it, beaming proudly and powerfully out of New York City, the nation, and the world, and I'm sure, Julie, even the cosmos. Our producer is Richard Dugan, Dr. D, helping us to make sure that all these particular words are coming across in the clarity that we would expect. This is fascinating, and I have to be honest, and that's the only way I'd be. I never knew that Roy Rogers didn't have his real name. Roy Rogers is born. He was born what? Leonard Franklin Sly.
Leonard Sly, yeah.
What a name. What a name. Yeah, and then also Dale Evans had a different name, right?
Yep, that's right.
Wow. Tell us the story behind that. I mean, that's amazing. You change your name, and now we know Roy Rogers. I mean, we think of Roy Rogers and go, wow, he's the king of the Cowboys, but his name wasn't always that, as you're about to tell us the whole name change story.
That's right. Well, Hollywood hasn't changed a whole lot in that respect, that they want everybody's name to be perfect, or they want everybody's persona to look a certain way. And so he chose Dick Weston, and they didn't like that. Early on, he chose that. So they renamed him Roy Rogers, and it just seemed to roll off your tongue. And Grandma was Frances Octavia Smith, and Frances Smith wasn't really grabbing anybody, so they renamed her Dale Evans.
Wow, that's amazing. I guess that's right. So if you and I were going to go into the movies or something like that, we'd probably We'd have to change our names too.
Change our names, yeah.
That goes without saying. So that's amazing. Right. I mean, we're talking, I remember, I'm 67 years young right now. And I remember as a young boy in New York City, we used to see these little cowboy gun sets that you could get, strap on your side, like the 2.6 guns. And it was so amazing. But one of the things I want to understand here is there's a backstory to this about both Dale Evans and Roy Rogers, and that is the horses that they had. Now, let's talk about Roy Rogers' most famous horse, Trigger. Trigger was what, a golden Palomino? I mean, this is putting it mildly. I'm not much of a horse person. I love them. But let's talk a little bit about Trigger, because I got to ask you, and I'm sure in every interview you always get this question, what happened to Trigger after he passed on July 3rd, 1965. But talk about this horse. I mean, it's almost the larger-than-life story that we're going to hear.
Well, Trigger had his own fan club, so he was kind of a big deal. People would write letters to Trigger, and kids would. And he was the best horse ever. When we got on him, when Grandpa would put us on him, he just knew that there was a child on top of him, and he needed to be very still. And he was such a sweet horse. And there was really very much a bond between Grandpa and that horse. Now, there were other Triggers, because as Trigger got older, it was really hard on him to have to trailer him across country to all these rodeos and shows they were doing. It's hard on their knees, and it's hard on them, the horse, in general. And he didn't want the lifespan of his horse to diminish, because he was taking him on all these rigorous road trips. So they had a Trigger Junior and they had a little Trigger to kind of fill in to do those road shows. And so they were very smart too. Wow. The one that usually went, Trigger Junior, was a little bit ornery though. And he decided, just about every show he could go rogue at some point, and Grandpa wasn't going to, say anything or do anything in front of all the kids in the arena. So he knew that. He was very smart, too. And at one time, he actually drew blood on Grandpa's shoulder. He bit down on Grandpa's shoulder and right through his costume and into his skin. Yeah, he was not real happy. He tried to find him afterwards, and he finally found him.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff because, the pictures in the book are so great, black and white, to make them even more prolific because it gives that special, it gives that special flavor to pictures of that time period. Black and white is the answer. But it's so amazing. One of the pictures I love the best is you see Trigger checking into a hotel and he's signing his name. That is hilarious.
He knew how to pick up the pencil and make an X on the line to sign in.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So what happened to Trigger? I guess that was the question I was asking before. Eventually, poor Trigger passed on. He was 30 years for a horse's age. I guess that's pretty good. But what happened to him?
Well, most people ask, is Trigger really stuffed? That's probably the number one question I get asked. Oh,
absolutely, right.
And Grandpa used to hate it when people said stuffed because that, pictures, a beanbag stuffed with sawdust. But he had a fiberglass mount made of Trigger. He took all the measurements, a taxidermist took all the measurements before Trigger died and made a mold of Trigger rearing up in his position, rearing up. And so when he died, they stretched the skin over that mold. And Gene Autry thought he was crazy, that Grandpa was crazy. He said, why are you spending all that money? Just throw him in the ground and be done with it. And Grandpa was so sentimental, he just couldn't bring himself to do it. He said, I think my fans would like to see Trigger in his rearing pose at the museum. And so he did. He put Trigger in the museum, much like a natural history museum has animals. And there he is. He's I think, down in the stockyards in Fort Worth, Texas.
That's amazing. And Dale, also on the female side, she has a famous horse known as Buttermilk. And Buttermilk was a buckskin quarter horse. But a little story about Dale and Buttermilk. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, she didn't really like that horse too much. He had been abused, actually, which is sad. He had been abused as a young horse. So he kind of had a sour personality and was not real easy to maneuver. And, she wasn't exactly a good horsewoman herself. And so he was a lot to handle, and he had attitude. And, she gave attitude right back at him. And she said that all the fillings, her caps on her teeth came off one time when he was trotting, because he was very rough, she said. He had a rough trot. And, so, Grandpa said he'd never see so much sky between a woman's rear end and a horse in all of his life when Grandma got on the horse.
That's funny. Julie, we're going to hear something now, the great story that your grandparents have shared with you and your experiences with them and all your family members. We're going to hear a little bit about, just in case people who are tuning in, and I'm sure there are many out there that are getting a first-time education on these two amazing individuals, Roy Rogers, the King of the Cowboys, and Dale Evans, the Queen of the West. We're going to play for the audience the opening, this amazing opening of the Roy Rogers Show that they're going to hear right now.
The Roy Rogers Show, starring Roy Rogers, King of the Cowboys, Trigger, his golden palomino, and Dale Evans, Queen of the West, with Pat Brady, his comical sidekick, and Roy's wonder dog, Bullet.
And I think that's amazing, Julie. How long did that show last on the air? That's just incredible in television history.
6 years on the air. It ended in 1957, and I was born in 58. So it had just ended when I was born.
Folks, on the Dr. Sky Experience, a lot of times people say to us, well, we talk so much about science and technology and things like that, but this lineage that we've had with our producer, Richard Dugan, Dr. D, Julie, it's been, 25, 30 years that we've been doing this. And we're so proud to be here on Talk Radio 77, WABC in New York City. But as we talk about this is such amazing, 33-plus chapters here. So from the humanistic side, tell us about the man, Roy Rogers. The stories that you have in this book, everybody should get a copy of this book. If not only they love Western history, but a granddaughter's love for her grandfather and back and forth. Just an amazing man who loved children. Isn't that the most probably prolific thing that we could say here first to start in the interview?
Well, yeah, he was kind of a big kid himself, and he related best to children and animals. And, yeah, he loved children. He was very, very shy, and he wasn't good at small talk, so anytime he was supposed to be at a party or a gathering, he was very uncomfortable because he just would stare down at his feet and not really know what to say because he was so painfully shy.
Wow.
But when he was with Grandma, it was fine because she did enough talking for, both of them. And there was not a shy bone in her body. So the opposites really did attract in this case, and they really worked out well together.
That's amazing. You got to ask this question. I mean, I've had a few marriages. I'm not so proud of saying that. I won't go into details. But like all of us, nothing is perfect out there. But between the two, Dale Evans and Roy Rogers, what do you think the secret was between them that their marriage lasted so long? And how many years approximately how many years were they together?
Well, they were, married 60 years. Wow. And, they had pretty much kind of, by their own admittance, made a mess of their lives before they met each other. She was married 3 times other than Grandpa, and he had been married twice. And when they finally got together, they said, okay, all right, no divorce. Murder maybe, but no divorce. No more divorces. So they stuck to that, and they just worked it out. It wasn't always easy, but they just worked it out. And for the most part, I mean, they were a lovely couple. I mean, just fun as anything. Best grandparents ever.
Wow. I gather from reading your book cover to cover, and everybody should get a copy of the book here, Your Heroes, My Grandparents, A Granddaughter's Love. And this is interesting because it's a publisher, and I hope I pronounce it right, Brighton Publishing, is that correct?
Uh-huh, that's right.
Yeah. Get a copy of this, folks. And why am I telling you this? It's very simple. There's very few people that we talk to here on this particular show that we don't think they write good books. But this is more of a personal introspection between a granddaughter and the personal side of this entire story. It's as if, Julie, and I seriously mean this, it's like if I walked into this book, I'd be right there in the same room with you, your grandma, your grandfather, your family. And it's written in such a way. It's an easy, no, seriously, folks, it's an easy read, and no read should be tough. I mean, if you have to read a book for school or something and do a term paper and people go, oh, I got to read this. No, this is different. This is something you want to take along. How about this, Julie? Take it along on your summer vacation and sit outside. If you're up by a lake or a pool, it's a nice way, to reflect on the human side of relationships between the children.
Well, it's nice because you can read one chapter. You can open it up and read one chapter all by itself. They stand alone. You don't have to read it cover to cover.
Wow. Well, in the time we have with you today, and I do want to spend more time with you here, and I'm hoping, I always ask this of guests, and we're certainly only asking that. I'd love to do this in another format sometime. We do a lot on the screen, in particular, let's say, movie theaters, in which we actually, after we show a film, a classic film, we try and bring on the big Zoom screen some of the people, let's say, like yourself, if we were talking about a series of movies and things that both your grandparents were in. So I'd hope you'd come back in the future, but don't leave yet. But I just hope that would be an okay thing for the future.
Oh, I'd love that.
Well, here we go. I got to ask this question. This is interesting. Tell us more about the swap meet and how was that? Because here's your dad, your grandfather, going out with you. He kind of hides behind sunglasses and a hat. Not that he wanted to be ID'd, but he liked to collect stuff. Am I putting it that in the right perspective?
Oh my gosh, he was such a pack rat. He couldn't throw anything away. And so he would go to the swap meet and collect stuff he didn't need and bring it home, and Grandma would just roll her eyes, and he'd know, okay, out to the man cave in the garage, and he'd hang it in the garage. And finally he got a museum because she would say, you have so much stuff, you should just go buy a museum and put all your stuff in it. And he said, okay, I will. And he did.
Go.
So we would go to the swap meet, the two of us, and we had it down because he would give me some bills, and then he'd say, okay, go as high as this. And if he doesn't, then just walk. And I'd say, okay. So I'd go up to the guy and kind of barter with him and everything. And one time the guy even said, Roy Rogers comes around to this swap meet quite often. I said, really? I said, wait a minute, who's Roy Rogers again? I was just playing, but he didn't know it. So he gave me a whole education about my grandpa. Wow. And I said, wow, that's pretty cool. And
that's amazing.
We just had so much fun. He bought me things that I didn't need. He bought me a purse. He just had to. I could tell. He had this little almost childlike look on his face, like, I got to get you this purse. It has pockets for everything. I said,
That's
okay,
incredible.
Grandpa. So
See, these are the kind of stories that we love. I mean, you don't hear this, like if you're just to look at Hollywood and read like a Wikipedia article.
Yeah.
It just talks about facts. It doesn't have the human side. But I want to talk about something here in the moments we have with you today, if you don't mind. The song that I always love, I mean, I'm a company that's incorporated in Texas for good reasons, but I love Texas. I'm not from there. I was originally born in New York, as many people know, but this is an interview about you and your grandparents. But one of the most amazing songs, I love The Yellow Rose of Texas, and here's another reason why. About 10 years ago, I was fortunate to go on a cruise down through the Caribbean, and we left out of Galveston. And on these cruises, there's a night or two to dress up in tuxedo and women in fine, gowns and all kinds of stuff like that. Beautiful. So I'm there on this cruise ship, and all of a sudden down in this magnificent gallery, I mean, there's like these big stairs that go up, like it looked like a big mansion. So they must have had a couple of 1,000 people there. So what do, Julie? They start playing The Yellow Rose of Texas. And boy, did those people, they got up out of their chairs, and boy, there wasn't a sad or dry eye in the whole place. Everybody was happy. But we're going to hear now a rendition of Yellow Rose of Texas, of course, by Roy Rogers. So here we go.
There's a yellow rose in Texas I'm going there to see. No other fella knows her, nobody, only me. She cried so when I left her, it like to broke my heart. And if we ever meet again, we never more shall part. She's the sweetest rose of color a cowboy ever knew. Her eyes are bright as diamonds, they sparkle like the dew. You may talk about your dearest maids and sing of Rosalie, but the yellow rose of Texas beats the bells of Tennessee, where the Rio Grande is flowing and the stars are shining bright. We walked along the river on a quiet summer night. She said, if you remember, we parted long ago. You promised to come back again and never let me go. She's the sweetest rose of color a cowboy ever knew. Her eyes are bright as diamonds, they sparkle like the dew. You may talk about your dearest maids and sing of Rosalie, but the yellow rose of Texas beats the bells of Tennessee. I'm going back to find her, my heart is full of woe. We'll sing the songs together we sang so long ago. I'll pick the banjo gaily and sing the song of yore. And the yellow rose of Texas, she'll be mine forevermore. She's the sweetest rose of color a cowboy ever knew. Her eyes are bright as diamonds, they sparkle like the dew. You may talk about your dearest maids and sing of Rosalie, but the yellow rose of Texas beats the bells of Tennessee.
And that's just so amazing, isn't it? Yellow Rose of Texas. It means so much. And tell me what that song maybe means to you.
Well, Grandma's favorite flower was the yellow rose, and her favorite state was Texas because that's where she was from. So that was perfect for her. And
Right.
They did a movie called The Yellow Rose of Texas together. And, at her memorial service, we all had yellow roses, and we put them down on her casket when we were at the cemetery before saying goodbye. And that was really meaningful. So whenever I see a yellow rose, I just think of Grandma, and it's very personal to me.
What a beautiful story. Born, of course, as you know best, October 31st, 1912, in all places, Uvalde, Texas. Amazing,
Yes.
down and deep in the heart of Texas, as we talk about. But here we go. I got another one. This is amazing. I mean, you're a musician yourself, and that story would be a whole other interview, but we're proud of what you do, and particularly the book here, again, Your Heroes, My Grandparents, A Granddaughter's Love, Julie Rogers Pomillia. I got to ask this. This is so incredible as we move forward with our interview today. You are part of a television show and a number of television shows, but the most hilarious thing, I think, in the book, without spoiling it for everybody, is the Jonathan Winters story. I love Jonathan Winters. Never met him, but I thought his humor, him with Johnny Carson, was off the top. So tell us a little bit about that experience, because that has to be one of the funniest things in live television, I guess, or what do you call it, pre-recorded television. What about it?
Right. Well, Jonathan Winters was such a comic. I mean, he was a little bit like Robin Williams was, where he was funnier when he was ad-libbing. And I won't ruin it, but in that chapter, my cousin did something. He was only 4 at the time. But my cousin did something right in the middle of the show that really was, you could not look the other way. It just happened right there on main stage. And because of that, Jonathan Winters had to take off and just he just went on this roundabout story and went off on his own on an ad lib. And the producer loved it so much, the director loved it so much, that they kept that version, and that's the one that they aired because it was so hilariously funny. Now, Jonathan Winters wasn't, underneath, he wasn't very happy with my cousin. And years later, 15 years later, he ran into my grandma at another event. And the first words out of his mouth after that much time was, "Hey, Dale, how's that blankety-blank grandson of yours?" And that's what he remembered. And so Rob has never lived that down with all the rest of the family. We've never let him get away with that.
But you got to get the book, right, Julie? So you know what you're talking about.
You need to find out what happened that threw Jonathan Winters off his game, but it became even funnier.
Well, we're not going to be a spoiler here on this interview, and that's a good reason to go get the book. But it's a tribute in a very serious way to your dad, Tom Fox. You devote so many time, how do I say this, in chapter, you devote so much time to your loving father. But again, this is such an amazing story, and I would love to have to do this, I'd love to do this with you again if we could in the future. But so many particular movie stars. I mean, the book is filled. You with Wilford Brimley, obviously you with so many movie stars. And I love that picture again as I'm flipping through the book of Trigger with a hat checking into the hotel. He's with what? I mean, the book just goes on. He's with Ronald Reagan. And then some other personal stories that you have that I think are so amazing. It's amazing. You did what? You actually escorted so many of these movie stars into what? Describe that in some of the stars.
Yes, because we used to have this show called the Golden Boot Awards, and it was akin to the Academy Awards, only it was only Western films. And so my family was one of the founding families of this awards show. So at the Beverly Hilton in Beverly Hills every August, we'd have this big dinner and awards show. So I would be in charge of several people meeting their limos and walking them down the red carpet and
awesome.
Taking them to their interviews or the green room. And so I got a lot of chances to meet very interesting people, only to find out that they were big fans of my grandparents. Wow. And that was pretty interesting because, they were peers. So it's a lot different hearing a peer talk about them than a fan. Not to minimize the fan's view. I'm not saying that, but it's just a very different take on it, and it was really fun.
That's amazing. Well, again, it's a tradition here this is just so phenomenal, Julie, and I appreciate your time today. But as we end our interview today, obviously I'd be remiss if I didn't even quote, and I can only do the best I can. I'm not Roy Rogers or Dale Evans by any means, but the words that we want to leave, Julie? Everybody who's listening to this archive, happy trails to you, right? Until we meet again, happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. And as we end the interview, well, without further ado, let's hear that amazing song, Happy Trails to You, that your grandparents, worked on so hard. It means so much in today's world. And I want to thank you for this particular edition of appearing as our special guest on this edition of the Dr. Sky Experience here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. We call it the crown jewel of radio, the iconic Talk Radio 77 WABC. We're out of New York City, around the nation, around the world, and I'm sure, Julie, in our world, out into the cosmos. So you get the last word. What's the message you want to get from the people out there reading this book that you spend a lot of time on?
I want them to see that they are still applicable and for today, in today's world. I think we need a hero. We need a positive message. We need a lighthearted book that was full of loving memories. And I just, I want them to know my grandparents.
Absolutely. Julie Rogers Pomillia, stay on the line with us. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And we'll look forward to having a second edition as we do this on the Dr. Sky Experience at your convenience. That concludes this exciting show, ladies and gentlemen, that you tell us that you like so much. We're thanks to our special, our producer, Richard Dugan, Dr. D, for aligning all the words and sounds to make this right. And again, many thanks to John Katzimatidis, the owner of this radio station that I grew up with as a New Yorker. WABC in New York, Talk Radio 77 WABC. Julie, thank you so much. So please stay on the line with us, and happy trails to you.
Yeah.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then.
Who cares about the clouds if we're together?
Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather. Happy trails to you till we meet again.
Some trails are happy ones,
Others are blue. It's the way you ride the trail that counts. Here's a happy one for you.
happy trails.
Trails to you until we meet again.
Happy
Trails to you. Keep smiling until then.
Who cares about the clouds if we're together?
Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather. Happy trails to you till we meet again. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the clouds if we're together? Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather.